Bruno, and I go to John Jay College.
My name is Aidan Lamb. I go to the University of Delaware and I study history and political science. We've been working on this project for about 6 years. Graduated S2 5 years ago. I don't know about you, but my first interview I think was with Sam too. That's how we got introduced to the project. And we just want to share some of our results. The CUNY S2 Intergenerational Learning Collective uplifts the voices of alumni from the middle school in the heart of Washington Heights. In partnership with City University of New York, this is a student-led and designed project where we, the first graduating class of School and Square, are documenting the experiences of our fellow graduates through a collection of interviews over a 5-year period. We are now high school graduates, but the two researchers in front of you haven't finished their first year of college. Through oral history, we strengthen connections with our community and generation. This project began in 2019 before the pandemic and protests swept the city and the nation. However, in the past 3 years, we've sharpened our focus from merely studying the adjustment to high school and college for these mostly Latinx youth who graduated with us, to concentrating on the lives and commitments of our classmates struggling and thriving in unprecedented times.
Living as working class youth of color, we have a unique lens from which to study epidemic and uprisings for racial justice. We live at the intersections of language and surveillance experienced by immigrant communities, where technology can be used as a tool for organizing and cruelty, where we're old enough to understand and young enough to be ignored. It's our families locked in economic structures that make us essential, yet undervalued. These conversations taken in times of isolation allowed us to grow more aware of systems of containment and dependence. As a participatory project, oral history has served as a pathway to critical consciousness and wide awakeness. Through this work, we've developed a deep sense of responsibility to represent BIPOC and immigrant lives from our community and our generation. This presentation augments understanding of participatory oral history work on interviewers, particularly young oral historians from communities like ours, documenting our own and our peer struggles and insights which matured during COVID-19 and racial protests.
When we began this research project, racial justice was not explicitly part of the focus. However, since the murder of George Floyd, at protests and over social media, conversations have been sparked between youth. We saw a space where our voices were needed. Through this project, memories have been relived. Young people who in elementary and middle school experienced racist interactions have begun to re-examine these moments with a new consciousness because both they and the world have matured in their understanding of racist structures. Through this work, we're combating anti-immigrant and anti-black narratives.
This work disrupts the structures that have historically silenced us. Through oral history, our stories encountering pandemic and racist-related obstacles are now accessible to the mainstream. As one of our fellow student researchers who couldn't be here today explains, this project will teach society about our experiences and the experiences of other kids in the community. With this work, we're planting the seeds of change.
Historically, the stories from our communities of Harlem, Washington Heights, and the Bronx have been silenced, yet this work amplifies our experiences. Through multiple publications and presentations, we've been able to highlight what it's like to live through times of pandemic and protests as working class youth of color, largely from immigrant families. There's power in knowing our work can affect the way somebody else thinks and affects their actions.
This work captures our voice. It's by us. We make the questions, we choose how the interviews will be used, and we interpret the content produced. It's better when it's us doing this work because it's people of our community and our generation whose lives we're examining. As one person interviewed for this project explains, being interviewed by peers allow us to feel more comfortable talking about how our lives have shifted. Only we truly know what they're going through. We found through this work that oral history is conducted by somebody who is a similar age, somebody who's experienced similar things, comes from the same community and same ethnic background, generates more of a connection. An interview conducted by a youth researcher with a friend sparked a memory from 6th grade. The interviewee recalled, "We were at McDonald's at one time, and there was that lady who came up to us and called us the N-word, and we were in 6th grade. You guys called the police, and the police didn't even end up showing up. They didn't do anything. They didn't care. They never came." The youth researcher reflected years later. It's not like the next day after the situation that happened, we were talking about it in school. It just went away. When asking the questions to bring it up, he felt comfortable telling me the story because I was there when it happened. Together, then and only then were we able to process this trauma. It was like, yeah, that really happened. In this situation, even the police didn't think it was a big deal. He and I both shoved it down, thinking this sort of thing was normal. That keeps repeating itself until you're asked it, and you're able to fully process it. That's when you realize your trauma really does matter.
What makes this project so meaningful is that all of the oral histories are being conducted by interviewers in the same age demographic as interviewees. This is important because it allows for an environment of openness and honesty. My colleague, Maya Laporte, a longtime researcher on this project, agrees with this statement, stating, "I think it's really important that we did the research and worked on this. Honestly, who better than young people to do that and engage in this? It would have looked so mundane and boring without that touch it has now. It wouldn't have been the same at all. It's really important that people, the demographic, people who understand what we're talking about. If the interviews were conducted by someone older, there would have been a disconnect." Alyssa Victoria, a fellow collaborator on the project, goes further in depth, stating, "It would have been very different because we're interviewing youth. It's youth interviewing youth. We're also minorities living in the same community. If it was an older person who didn't have the same circumstances or was in the same predicament as our peers we interviewed, it would have been very different. There wouldn't be as much comfort or engagement. We're not only able to ask questions, but also talk as friends, rather than just allow interviewers just to get answers out of them. The participatory aspect of this project allows for interviewers to take it into their own hands and learn how to approach each interview. We decided on what questions we need to ask and what information we want to learn from our peers. Because we've been given the keys, this project has been a huge part of us. I wrote my college essay about this project and the work we have done. Because of that, it's more fluid, personal, and intimate. It's a part of our hearts. We reached the final stages of the project. I look back and see how all of us have progressed, and how conducting these interviews allowed me to come closer to my peers and to have an understanding of what they've gone through.
Both the act of interviewing and being interviewed can be transformative. The conversation itself sparks new ways of thinking and evaluating personal experiences. While ushering in a new critical consciousness, space gets created to forge new solidarities. This work challenges us to rethink past experiences. The student researcher for this project explains, before doing this work, you start to believe yourself that the injustices that we faced were normal. Interviewing my peers and being interviewed for this project was therapeutic, because I got to do some self-reflection on things that I and others have experienced, and the severity of those experiences. And when talking to my friends or others in my community, especially talking to them about the racial uprisings that happened during the pandemic, we will downplay moments of microaggression and racism that we experienced in the past and just laugh it off because we were used to it. And so with this work, when I get to interview others in my community, I feel like it will also help them really realize the extent of what they've gone through and unpack their experiences. Since 2019, when I began this work, I have evolved in my interpretation of everyday manifestations of racism. I had to commute to Chelsea for school. It's a community of mostly white people. I had to think about how I'm dressed and how I'm perceived by other people and how I could change myself to not be seen as a threat. I look at that and I'm like, why do I have to do that? My effort to appease anxious white people makes me feel inauthentic. But this work also confirmed to me that I'm not alone, that the anxiety of living with black skin, even in a progressive city like New York, is widespread. Another student researcher who could not be with us today confirmed this when he wrote about this project. I was able to reflect on my own experience going downtown to Stuyvesant State High School in Battery City to take the test to get into a specialized secondary school. I felt stared at, like the overwhelmingly white community was telling me I didn't belong. The anxiety I experienced during my trip downtown turned to anger and frustration with the realization through this oral history that these issues are systemic. I was motivated to do more.
Every member of this project has seen tremendous growth individually and as a team. As stated by one of our researchers, this research has brought out a sense of empathy in all of us. It helped us with our transition to adulthood. Spending our formative years with such a strong unifying force like this project has not only developed our interpersonal skills, but has allowed the relationships and bonds between us to flourish. The process of collecting these interviews expanded our understanding of modern struggles. A lot of us found that this experience greatly improved our communication skills, networking ability, and responsibility. I personally remarked about the experience and the skills. I'd never been interviewed before in my life, and it really helped with my communication. It helped with my networking and building and creating and responsibility too. I'd say it matured us. The actual work we do here is great. It's relevant for the future and it's impactful. It turns us into better speakers, writers, listeners, and interviewers. Conducting the interviews, we learn from one another and build something together. In this way, the oral history transforms both the interviewer and the interviewee. Responses from researchers also show how this group has evolved into classmates, family. When elaborating on how this project impacted friendships, one of our peers stated, "I otherwise would not have known about her living situation or how the pandemic impacted her." We've been able to recognize our affinity with each other and the difficulties over the last few years. That empathy has been a driving force for our work as we bear witness to the struggles and obstacles around us. We learn the value of work. As one news researcher stated, this work is important because now we have documentation of what it's like to be this age and go through high school during the pandemic. These are results that cannot be replicated or made up. In short, what we thought to be a temporary, part-time project has turned into a significant part of our lives.
I always felt proud of my culture and heritage, but because of this work, I felt more of a connection since I got to talk to others my age who were in my community. Doing this interview made me realize I have a passion for making sure other people's voices are heard and to hear others' perspectives. It really changed my outlook on my future and my academics. It's also made me work harder and achieve what I want in the future because this project gave me the confidence to do so.
When it comes to skills we've gained during our project, it's hard to narrow them down to just one. However, the main difference we researchers see in ourselves is the ability to communicate with people. As a rising sophomore at the University of Delaware, I believe that this work has made our one-on-one conversations better. When you hear people's stories, I've learned it builds trust. All of these soft skills are really important. We definitely have an advantage to this project. Not a lot of people have done the work we've done. With the continuation of this project, I've been able to see personal changes from a young 13-year-old to a college student. As a result of this project, I've taken the skills, memories, and connections into college. Overall, it made us more well-rounded. It was a free opportunity that cost me nothing, and I gained a lot from it.
We have all gone through phases in the 6 years we've been doing this, especially as the world around us kept changing. But with us, this project remained remarkably consistent. In the real world, it's crucial to comprehend and be able to fully express yourself to others, but that isn't the only lesson we learned from this. When I first came into this project, I was shy and didn't know how to communicate with others all that well. And through this project, I can say that having the experience of interviewing others got me out of my shell and made me feel more confident in the classroom. I've learned how to be inquisitive about what other people have gone through. Empathy was a crucial ability, one that unquestionably aids us in having more interesting and educational conversations with our peers. The research that I did for this project also helped me learn how to analyze primary sources and even provide my own perspectives, which has proven to be an asset. It's crucial to emphasize the personal lessons that we as students learned from all of this. As this project comes to a close, it is clear that the knowledge and experience we gained from working on it will be valuable to us in the future.
All right, now we have a little activity prepared. We want you guys to interview each other, or mini interview. We have some questions on the board that relate to our project, and we want you guys to think about these questions for yourselves and each other. Maybe share out a couple of responses. Our first question: what role does your community serve in your life? Our second question is: have you witnessed positive or negative growth in your community? Our last question is: what changes in yourself have you felt over the last 4 years?